In 2028, Elon Musk plans to start something absolutely insane on the moon. SpaceX's Moon Base Alpha, built entirely from the Starship rocket itself, will mark humanity's first real step toward living off-world. Musk even gave it a clever name, Auda City, a mix of Audacity and Lunar City, and it fits perfectly. This base will sit right on the rim of Shackleton Crater, where the sunlight never fades, and frozen water can be turned into rocket fuel. And it's going to be packed with cutting-edge tech we've never seen before. For the first time, NASA's dream of a lunar base might actually become reality. This time, with Elon-level ambition and far fewer PowerPoint slides. So how will SpaceX start this off using just one Starship? Let's find out in today's episode of Techmap. According to SpaceX's website, Starship cargo flights to the lunar surface for research, development, and exploratory missions start in 2028. Here's the genius part. It's a base without a base. The concept follows a simple idea. The best lunar base is no lunar base needed. Instead of building a separate structure, SpaceX plans to use the Starship itself as the base. The lunar Starship is designed to be self-contained, with living quarters, workspaces, and life support systems already built in. This approach saves a ton of money. Compare it to the International Space Station, around $150 billion to build, versus Skylab, which was made by repurposing part of a Saturn V rocket stage for just a fraction of the cost. SpaceX is taking that same mindset and scaling it up. The lunar Starship is sleek, painted white, probably for marketing and heat reasons, and built without wings or a heat shield, because it's never coming back to Earth. These ships are meant to stay on or around the moon permanently, transforming into something useful rather than floating away as space junk. Inside, Starship already offers about 1,000 cubic meters of pressurized space. That's massive compared to any other crewed spacecraft. But after landing, SpaceX plans to convert some of its giant fuel tanks into extra living space, adding another 1,400 cubic meters. That more than doubles the space for astronauts to live, work, and run science missions, all without launching separate habitats. And here's the kicker. Since Starship's launch costs are targeting under $10 million per flight, this approach makes it the cheapest habitable space per cubic meter in history. The process of turning Starship into a moon base starts with something that sounds completely insane. You tip it over. Yeah, you literally knock the world's biggest rocket onto its side. But there's a smart reason behind that madness. When Starship lands vertically, most of its interior is just empty fuel tanks. Only the top third is actually usable living and cargo space. But when you lay it down horizontally, suddenly you can use the entire 50-meter-long, 9-meter-wide hull. That's like going from a cramped apartment to a massive open-concept studio on the moon. So, how do you gently tip over a 100-ton spaceship without turning it into scrap metal? You start by attaching heavy-duty cables to the top of Starship's nose. Then, one or two massive lunar rovers drive slowly away, pulling it down like a giant lever. The moon's lower gravity, just 1/6 of Earth's, makes the job easier, but the dusty surface can be slippery. So, before doing anything, engineers would use rocket engine blasts to compact the ground beneath, creating a more stable foundation. Another option? The winch anchor method. Imagine a huge electric winch, basically a giant battery-powered fishing reel, bolted to something solid like a boulder, a steel spike hammered into the regolith, or even the landing leg of another Starship. You run a cable from the winch to the top of the ship, then slowly reel it in. The cable tightens, the Starship leans, and eventually, it lies gently on its side, without a crash landing. All right, now comes the real transformation. Inside, astronauts would strip out old rocket parts and start building a new interior floor running down the middle of the hull. Think of it like turning a hollow metal tube into a long, cozy hallway. They'd then add all the essentials: walls, lighting, plumbing, air systems, and wiring. Eventually, you'd have living areas, workstations, a galley, showers, gym equipment, and maybe even entertainment screens. Basically, a lunar loft with a view of the Earth. But this isn't an easy weekend project. Expanding into the fuel tanks, the extra 1,400 cubic meters of space, would take about 165 workdays, and roughly 60 of those days would be just modifying the tanks themselves. That's exhausting work in a bulky spacesuit with limited tools, constant dust, and the ever-present risk of leaks. This is why robotic helpers, possibly Tesla bots, could take on much of that heavy lifting and fine assembly work, keeping astronauts safe while speeding up construction. The final layout aims to be open and simple. One long, single-level floor positioned about 1/3 up from the base. This gives you storage space underneath, equipment access below the deck, and a nice open ceiling above to fight off that claustrophobic feeling. And get this, unused sections could even be leased out to private companies. Imagine research labs, 3D printing modules, or even early lunar tourism pods, all inside retired starships. Now let's talk about power, because a lunar base is only as strong as the energy that keeps it running. With sunlight never quitting, or nearly so, on the rim of Shackleton Crater, the solar energy strategy would focus on maximizing continuous power generation and addressing specific lunar challenges. The base would have big solar panels set up on the crater's rim. These panels would catch the sun's light, which stays low in the sky there. Normally, the sun gives about 1,361 watts of power per square meter in space. And on the moon, with no air to block it, the panels could make 300 to 400 watts per square meter with good ones. That's 20 to 25% more power than on Earth. Unlike other moon spots that go dark for 14 days, Shackleton's rim has sunlight almost all the time. This means the base can power houses, 3D printers, to build with moon dust, rovers, and even the Starship rocket without stopping. It could support 4 to 6 people, like scientists and engineers, and let them send data back to Earth live. Next, backup power just in case. Even though the sun is almost always out, there might be tiny shadows or broken equipment sometimes. A company called Starcatcher is working on sending super strong sunlight using special lenses. This could add extra power, up to 10 times more, if the panels need a boost, but they'd have to be careful not to hurt anyone with it. As we've seen, Starship itself offers an impressive amount of space inside, enough for short-term missions or a small crew. But for long-duration stays, like the month-long missions NASA envisions for Artemis, astronauts will need room to breathe, literally and psychologically. That's where 3D printing from lunar regolith comes in. Imagine building additional modules directly from moon dust, new labs, storage areas, or living quarters, all printed right next to Starship. These could be attached to the main habitat, forming a hybrid lunar base that grows over time. Once construction wraps up, the next challenge is survival, because even a perfectly built moon base won't last long if it's not protected from the two biggest threats out there: meteorites and cosmic radiation. By covering the habitat with about 5 meters of lunar regolith, or moon soil, you can block most cosmic radiation and absorb impacts from smaller meteorites. It's basically a natural bunker, made of the moon itself. To actually deploy this shield, astronauts or robots would use mechanical equipment like a telescoping lunar crane. Think of a truck arm fitted with a shovel or clamshell bucket. It would scoop up regolith and carefully dump it over the Starship's hull, layering it until the entire habitat is buried under a thick, protective blanket. And while this might sound like extra work, it's a crucial step. Not just for safety, but for testing. Because the whole point of building on the moon isn't just to live there, it's to learn how to live off-world. While NASA is laser-focused on getting boots back on the moon before China does, Elon Musk is thinking way bigger. A permanently crewed lunar science base would be far more impressive than a repeat of what was already done incredibly well by Apollo in 1969. And honestly, he's got a point. Because in Musk's eyes, just repeating Apollo is no longer the goal. The real challenge for this decade is to build a place where humans actually live full-time on the moon. That's a whole new level of difficulty. We're talking dust storms made of razor-sharp lunar dirt, 2-week-long nights with zero sunlight, and radiation levels that make sunscreen look like a joke. No one's been back since 1972. Apollo 17 still holds the record for the longest human stay on the moon, just 3 days. It was a historic flex, but if humanity ever wants to stay, not just visit, we've got to master endurance. Short Apollo-style trips were amazing for bragging rights, but they didn't let us do much with the moon itself. No time to mine water ice, test habitats, or figure out how to survive long-term. Now, SpaceX and others are shifting focus. The goal isn't just to plant flags, it's to practice living off-world. Think of it as a dress rehearsal for Mars. The moon's environment is actually way harsher than Mars. So if we can survive there, no atmosphere, freezing nights, and constant radiation, Mars will almost feel like a tropical getaway. This is where something called in situ resource utilization comes in. Basically, it means using what's already there instead of shipping everything from Earth. Lunar soil, or regolith, is packed with oxygen locked inside the rocks. Heat it up, run electricity through it, and boom, oxygen for breathing or rocket fuel. Lab tests have already extracted nearly all of it, and that's a huge deal. That oxygen can become liquid oxygen fuel for SpaceX's Starship to head home or travel deeper into space. If we can master this process on the moon, Mars missions become way cheaper and far more realistic.